Spirit of Matter, and this is an episode about Pluto retrograde. I know it's eclipse day today, and I will probably do more videos about eclipse, so it's not the with Venus wisdom on a Venus day, so I usually do it a Friday, but dedicated actually to Pluto. And I believe the eclipses are going to be intermixed because this Pluto was very much involved with both the eclipse that we had in April and the eclipse that we are having today. So I have another video about the eclipses. You can watch those. You can binge watch my channel if you're up to it. Um, Pluto just retrograded and it goes back to Capricorn. Right now it's still in Aquarius, I believe. And I have a story. I do like this is Pluto stuff, so trigger Pluto stuff, okay? Like mindful watching and be easy with you. Um, I've had this $10 bill which says "We the People" on it in my wallet. And for those of you who don't know, as a pre-eclipse thingy, I've had suddenly my neighbor from down floor uh, was mad at me, and I was very triggered because it took me so long to find this apartment, and I was just very triggered. I'm not a conflictual person in my private life at all. I know people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're speaking out for these atrocities, for this." In my private life, I'm like the most, you know, peaceful person, and that was such a trigger. So I said, "Okay, I'll just sleep at the airport. I don't know if I'll fly or not." And I was at the airport, and I decided to use this bill, which I usually keep in my wallet like a lucky charm, and I used this bill to buy ice cream because I said I really need to pamper myself. And after I used this bill, I went on Twitter. It's the bill with the "We the People." And the story for Pluto retrograde was that a person at the subway, who later I found out was homeless, was being choked to death by, later I found out, a veteran, um, to the cheering sound of the people around him. And that reminded me a scene from Dostoevsky, where he, where you literally see people cheering up for killing people. And of course, it was very, very triggering. Um, and you know that people that are homeless are doing things to get arrested or trying to be loud or do something to get arrested so they can get food and shelter. And there was a lovely woman on YouTube that explained that, and I saw it today, and I was very happy that somebody was advocating for these voices. Um, and I could not help thinking that this Pluto retrograde was symbol of reiterating to us, to we, the people, that we're not flawless either. And as we are moving from the very centralized Capricorn, very hierarchical Capricorn, it is up to us to make sure that we don't create these Dostoevsky scenes where a person that was homeless, that's best shot at getting food and shelter, is doing a mess, and he was not physically hurting anybody. He was just talking about his situation and how terrible it is, the situation for the homeless. And probably he was, shouting at people or whatnot because he was hoping to get arrested or to change something. And apparently he got arrested for like 40 times or 50 times because that was his way to get his next meal. It's like you either steal or you do something in public that breaks the order, the civil order, and this is what you would get arrested for. You don't get arrested for everything. So stealing, you're probably not going to get arrested. Um, so that was his only way to like get shelter and food. And I was also thinking about the veteran who was choking him, putting him on a chokehold. And for that veteran, veteran also have PTSD. So he probably believed that he's doing the right thing of stopping someone. And then when the people are cheering up, so you're like, okay, then I'm not projecting from my trauma. This is not a flashback, but people are actually cheering up for me doing the right thing. And then, a person is being choked to death for literally no reason. All the while, the people, cheering up his death. And imagine, like, take this scene. Take this thing and imagine a Capricornian person with, this knight in uniform armor would come and say to the veteran, "No, you stop. You're using too much power. No, you people are all arrested or having, a huge fine for cheering this up. No, this person, they're homeless. We're gonna restrain him from hurting people, but we're gonna take care of him so that he can have a place to be until he's rehabilitated or whatnot." Then we will take a look at this officer and we would hail this officer. Another scene. Now I want you to take another scene. And instead of this grown adult, would come a person in the exact same train with a gun and start shooting everybody that cheered this person, that cheered the death of this homeless person. They would just come and start shooting everybody. Okay? A lot of people, we the people who don't like this, we would hail this person. Because they're like, oh, he did the reasonable thing. He did something about it. So that those scenes will not be reoccurring. So that people who think to cheer up for someone being dying will think twice because, hey, there can be an interval where a person can come with a gun or a weapon and start killing everybody for no reason. And so you get to think about um, both the Pluto Sag where we had these school shootings, and the mass shootings that we do have in the States. And you get to think about the power of the people. Because if a person would come with a gun and somebody would stop him, then it's very likely we would hail them. But then if a person is being choked to death and people are cheering his death and this person is homeless, and the person who killed him basically had, throughout the case, it was in front of the crowd, okay, it was very public, again, very much Pluto Aquarius, and the people were cheering up. So if you, let's say, are a veteran and you sometimes have this PTSD, you have these flashbacks, and you've been aggressive, then usually it is by the reactions of the people that you realize that you were in a flashback, you were in a dream, you were not reacting according to the situation, and then the people can stop you. Like when there are a couple of people that are like looking at you and are like, then you can go back from your flashback and like, oh, okay, like this is not what happened in the battlefield. Like I'm in a different situation, I'm in a different place. Um, and that can bring people back to this reality, and then they're like, oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm this, I'm that, and and hold back the forces. But if this happens to you and what you see is a crowd of people cheering up, then you're like, okay, I am doing the right thing, and you keep doing that, and then you kill a person for no reason, and everybody cheering up. And so we have this situation that are not unlike the Me Too cases. Okay, and why? Because in this situation we have a person that was being attacked, and we have a person who was attacking. Both these people are not in a situation where they can respond because they are very reactive. And so, and you see that in many cases of a person that was suffering from violence, when they think about the offender, they're like, okay, they are fucked up. They had this horrid thing happen to them and they took it out on me. But where are the people? Where are the people that should have held this person accountable? Where are the people that should have intervened? Where are the people? Where are we, the people? Pluto retrograde in Aquarius gives us these cases. It reminds us that it is on us to change the reality. It reminds us that we are given the power, and Pluto will go back from its retrogression into Aquarius. The people will be given power, tremendous power. And then the question is, what do we do with that? Pluto showed us, hey, you are asking for power and you're going to get it. You're going to get it. This is the telos of the sign of concentrated energy, tremendously concentrated energy. at a given sign. Okay, with Capricorn, it was the hierarchy and the structure of that is hierarchical. The mountains. The mountains had huge power. Okay, this is the gold. They store the gold that we store in our banks. And this is where people rely on when there is inflation. They go to the gold. What's happening with this gold? How do we attain this gold? Okay, those are questions that Pluto asks in Capricorn. Hey, the gold from the mountains. What about the water? And think about Saturn now entering Pisces. What about the water? Didn't these metals serve as a filter to the water, to the groundwater that you're drinking and that you're watering your plants, crops with? Okay? Maybe you took too much from it. Maybe you violated the people that were worshipping the mountains, and so what happened? Now you see how important are the mountains and how important it is to store the gold not only in the bank but also in the mountains so that we have left water, drinking water, and crops and land and so on and so forth. And now Pluto in Aquarius is our nervous system. What happens when somebody hacks? You had all this hacking. So when Pluto was direct, we saw all these people gaining power by hacking into those very hierarchical systems through technology. Okay, so the Tseva Adom, which is the siren that we have, somebody in Sudan claimed to have hacked the system that warns people that there is missile attack while there were missiles. We didn't hear about this in the news in Israel, but if I was reading the news in English, then I saw that was an article in Sudani newspaper. So maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But people can hack into these systems. You give your fingerprint. Okay, when I was in Netherlands, I was in between homes and I didn't have my passport. Nobody asked for my fingerprint. And this is biometric passport. They went, and the people at the border control, they were so nice to me. They gave me 3 cups of coffee. They set me there, and as they were calling the embassy, but the Dutch embassy in Israel, until they found the documents that I had applied for a passport when I was 16, when my father acknowledged me. He had to acknowledge me in order for me to get the passport. Okay, so it had to acknowledge me at 16, even though we were not living together, and he still did that. So it's like me visiting the fatherland, and I spoke about this. Okay, it was a healing experience. Now I live in a street that is called about an essential oil that is the oil of the mother. And as I was in Netherlands, I got essential oil, frankincense, that was the oil of the father. And some old woman who helped me gave me that. So I was healing both my ancestors from my fatherland and from my motherland. And now it was this situation where I've learned nobody asked for my fingerprints. So what are my fingerprints are doing? And it's not that I blame the people who I contacted. They were very kind to me, and they did above and beyond to try to help me. Okay, and they got the documents for when I was 16, and I applied for the passport. Okay, so of course they try to help me the best they can. And yes, you always have the people who are being given illegal orders and all that, and dealing with, the rules. Um, but from this situation, you see it kind of like we, the people, are okay. It's just that there are rules and regulations. Pluto retrograde in Aquarius reminds us of these Dostoevsky like scenes where we, the people, are hailing useless death and cruelty for no reason. And so when you think of the passage of Pluto in Aquarius, it's going to be 20 years. And you think, well, now we are getting this power. Now we are getting this power. And you think, well, why does it take so long? Why does it take so long to knock off all the old systems? What happens when the people get the power? This is what we are reminded of. So I just found it very curious that just as Pluto retrograded, and I didn't even know Pluto was retrograding, I was sleeping at the airport, I was very tired, and I was like, I don't even want to call people and sleep at their place because I just need my own peace. And the airport was the safe place to go. Plus, I knew that it is involving my ninth house, and I'm just going to purge something in my ninth. And I used the We the People. That, by the way, I think I got it. Yeah, they had change in dollars once when I bought. They have change in dollars. I bought coffee and I got the money in dollars. I was given $20 and I got the $10 with the We the People. So I got it there at the airport. And now I was using this to buy ice cream. So I was using this We the People bill, because it was like this hopeless situation. And I was like, okay, I have 50 euros and I have $10. So I'm going to use my $10 and save my 50 euros, because they gave the change they gave in shekels, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Maybe I will need to fly. Maybe this. Maybe that. I don't know. Um, so there's this personal story, but there's also this the things that symbolize Pluto and Aquarius. That is the currency of us, the people, were basically being exchanged. Like, now I use this to buy ice cream, and then I hear about this story where us, the people, was the problem. It was not violence of a cop. Okay, it was a 24-year-old veteran that killed this person. It was not something that we can blame, this or that, because it's our job as we the people. Hey, those people that we say we want to take care of, the people that said no to violence, people that escaped, sexual harassment or domestic violence, or people who are veterans who served our countries, those people that we are thinking of, they also need food, they also need shelter. When they are not given this food and shelter, of course they are going to try everything that's going to give them the next meal, including getting into the train and start talking, which he was doing. He was starting to talk. And instead of people um, joining with him, because that's what that could have happened. Like, had Pluto been direct, perhaps that what would have happened. Like, all the people in the train will start demonstrating, start putting their cameras on and start demonstrating, start to talk about this, and going out to the street, going out of the train, and then having more people starting to demonstrate and starting like that is what should have happened with this. Okay, a person comes in, talks about the difficulties situation for the homeless. Get your freaking camera out, start talking, start advocating for this person, start demonstrating, start seeing what can we do with this person. And now they try to restrain him back, and the same person that represents the problem and the blind spot of the hierarchical system, where you pay taxes and it's supposed to go for when you need that, so that you can rehabilitate yourself and go back to work so that your money can make money. Okay, that person that represents the corruption of the system was basically not helped by the people. This is the meaning of Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. It's where we need to correct what we do as society. Okay, for me as a private person was not that terrible. Okay, I was just at the airport. That was the safest place for me to be. If I didn't have a place to sleep just right that night, then even though I'm paying rent, okay, and I'm not blaming my neighbors. I have a video that I made about this. Watch my video about how to save your ass, when you are buying housing for investment. And I talk about the structure and how when we divide houses, we have this wall in the place where the bakwa in the place where it's supposed to be empty, and so it creates this situation where people feel death it's death or life, and they must break this wall. So this is probably what my neighbor felt. Okay, I'm not the kind, like, I'm mostly traveling. All I do when I'm at home is I cook, I make, like, I clean, I take a bath, do laundry, and I sleep. Like, I'm the most convenient neighbor you could probably ever have. Like, I'm really probably one of the most convenient neighbors you could probably ask for. But when the structure is made in a certain way that blocks, okay, the center of the house, and people don't know about this. Okay, and it was not small apartments, it was not like greedy landlords, that was not the case. So, poof. Yeah, and I found myself in the airport. I'm like, I'm paying for a house and I can't sleep there because there was this trauma that just happened. And this is happening to me when I'm living alone in my own unit. And I happen to use the We the People bill that I got at the airport now just to buy ice cream to kind of like, okay, treat myself, pamper myself a little bit. So there were a lot of good things. Like, for example, I had the money to buy me food. Um, I met interesting people. I still had a place that if somebody would need to in an emergency, like bridge between that neighbor and me or something like that, maybe I could go back to sleep there. But it was not as terrible as when I was in between houses and I was escaping to the Netherlands. Um, but it was also this symbol of, hey, now there's something happening that is because of the structure. The people themselves are suffering, and it's not the blame of somebody who was being greedy or no. The story for a mansion, a family lived there, the kids left home, they sold the mansion, and they sold it for investment so that more families can live there. And so the houses are, yes, they're not the biggest that can be, but they're not like tiny, tiny, and they're being made with a lot of consideration, being held and kept with a lot of consideration in the people. So it's not like people we can complain about or that we're saddened about. It's like it's not this story of oppression. It's just simply so that by the merit of the structure, you want another family to live there, so you build a wall, and that wall is built in the center of the house, and then people will try to break the walls because this is like you have something in your heart. And then it's like, okay, this is poof. And I needed the 3 4 days out of my house to just meditate and like get the anger out because it was really a life or death situation over nothing. But this structure is like, oh, this is that meaningful. Like this is that meaningful. um, and and how you see that those situations evolve. And I was like, well, I'm not homeless. I'm paying for rent for a place that is beautiful. I'm growing potatoes that now I couldn't water. Just as I began, there was somebody I saw that was leaving their work because they got sexually harassed, and they were living by somebody that gave them a shelter, but they could not provide for food. And I said, well, I'm growing potatoes. Soon my potatoes will grow, and I can come to you and bring you potatoes. And I was feeling so excited that now I can use this land. And the real estate person that was the landlord previously, he was happy that I'm growing. He was like, yeah, you can bring more stuff. You can bring more vegetables or take the weeds out. And I helped him take the weed out from the whole place and even from the place of that neighbor. So maybe that scared her or something that I'm going to stay there. Because everything happened when I began to stay there. People usually changed and left this place. So that was a situation where I was really fortunate with like everything, you know, was not repressive or oppressing or none of that. Um, but still, I dealt with something that's to do with us, the people. Okay, so there is both the understanding how, with Pluto retrograding back to Capricorn, how do we build structures that allow us to make better choices as individuals and as society? If I go to my own place, then I'm like, yeah, feng shui is freaking important. Even if I put, let's say, nice colors in the baths to have some green or forest or painting that I did, it's still on the backwa. Like you said, the structure really needs to change for the benefit of the people living there. I don't know how to make this change, but at this time awareness of this, and I'm tending to it. And so the structure of our society really needs to change. We can be pro homeless, but then be of the crowd that cheers up a person that kills a homeless person as they make some noise in the train because they really don't know where to go anymore. And then somebody kills them, and the person that kills them is a veteran. So that person could have been like in having a flashback or a trauma, and it was up to us, the people, to we the people, to kind of hey, relax, relax, relax. You're overdoing this. You're overkilling the situation, and the person. And it was up to us to kind of like, hey, stop, stop, stop. This is too much. You stopped him. You held him. Now, let's wait for the cops. Let's wait for something. Like, let's stop this. Um, but no, the people were cheering up, and so if you're the person, then you're like wondering, am I in a flashback? Am I not in? Well, people are cheering up, so I'm actually doing something good. I must keep killing this person. Okay, how do we change the structures in society in a way that supports and aids doing the right decisions? And for me, I'm Pluto in 0 degrees Scorpio, so I'm having my Pluto square right now. And my Pluto square, I was reflecting about the scorpionic tendency to withstand and put and give tests of character. And there is a certain degree to having a character that usually, the test of character is not in pleasant circumstances, um, and to sort of like thrive in crisis. And how this tendency, the scorpionic tendency of the test of character, of making a man out of yourself, of withstanding difficulties and crisis, and kind of growing resilience, which is very much a Scorpio word, like you're being resilient to a situation, versus the notion and understanding, and this is the dualistic nature of Scorpio, where a Scorpio understands humanity very deeply. That being said, there is also this great naivety and desire for connection that just is. So um, there is also this difficulty to accept. Scorpio is giving these tests of character and try to think who will be the man, who will be the woman who will withstand these tests of characters and whom I can trust. But in giving these tests of characters, you become a certain character that cannot be trusted. Okay? And this is the scorpionic tendency, whereas Aquarius, being Saturn ruled, is really about thinking of people in masses, and sometimes Aquarians are known for actually avoiding people. But they have this dualistic nature, again, where they they will have this tendency to put themselves in certain situations where they maneuver out of. So, for example, I was in the airport and I met a person who was Sun in Aquarius, and literally Sun. I think Pluto is on his Sun right now. Um, so they were like really targeted by these eclipses, and and when I was speaking to them, they lived in Florida and they are a truck driver. So I asked, how do you manage with all the weather, the crazy weather? So we have a notice. And so I go to a place that is safe, I drive to a place that is safe, and then I hike in nature. So kind of like Aquarius has this logic ability to give a logical solution to the situation that puts themselves in a place where they can be okay. And I've shared an apartment with an Aquarius sun for almost a decade. It's like 5 years, and then before that, we also lived pretty close. So every week or so, they would go on a pilgrimage, and sometimes they would put themselves in situations where they were thirsty or nearly dried up, or like all these crazy things. They also had placements in Scorpio, but it's kind of the ability to find a solution in crisis situation, the ability to find a safe place to be in crisis situation, avoiding people, and at the same time thinking about humanity, thinking about the masses, thinking of what will be good for humanity. And so with Scorpio, it's more personalized. It's kind of like you know people very well, but then you give them these tests of character to hope and find the person who isn't like that in their nature. And Aquarius is kind of like finding the solution. Like, where can I put myself right now that is good for me? And what can humanity do for the better? So, this square, okay, this Pluto square for the Pluto generation, is kind of like reflecting upon things, reflecting upon the nature of humanity, not idealizing the nature of humanity, but also not outruling the nature of humanity. Okay, because there are some cases where you run into tremendous help by the people. That people are actually looking to assist you, and they're trying, they're turning heads of how to help you. And sometimes they manage to, and sometimes they don't manage to, and everybody's frustrated. Okay, I've seen these situations as well. And the other part is those Dostoevsky-like scenes where the result of this algorithm, where we have one person looking for shelter and food, People being afraid that maybe there's a terrorist, babe. I don't know. Like, what are they gonna do? Well, they're homeless. They're looking for shelter and food. What can you do? Can you demonstrate? Can you give them food? Can you, because now they want more than their next meal. They want to change. Can you get your phones out and start broadcasting and supporting this person? And can you make a spontaneous demonstration in favor of this person? Like that's what they needed to do probably. And then we have this veteran person just like maybe they were having a trauma and then they see the people cheering up. So they're like, oh, I probably should proceed. I'm probably doing something good for humanity. Um, those are the kind of situations, and those situations were triggered by the eclipses. So we had an eclipse in April that was squaring this Pluto, and Pluto was direct in Aquarius. They kind of call us to reflect upon power, to reflect upon the nature of people and the nature of systems. And then we had another, we are having another eclipse today that's kind of connected to the retrograde Pluto now. Just because the retrograde Pluto is squaring the nodes at the time of the eclipse with Mercury retrograde. Okay, so now we are having these events, world events that are being manifested and call us to rethink. It's like rethink what we are doing. How do we use our power as people? Because now we are given power. And then Pluto is making his passage to kind of reflect, for the people to reflect on their own power. It's like, hey, we called for this, and this happens. Now what? And now how to proceed? It's not just we need to embrace our power. It's like, oh, we're just given power. At this point, you're on the train. Somebody comes up, starts speaking about how terrible the situation for homeless people, and starts swearing people. Okay? You, as society, are in power. Even before somebody comes and grabs him and puts him on a chokehold. What do you do? And then there is the passage from the one person to the masses, because there is, I've had a not similar situation, but I was traveling in the bus and on the Memorial Day, before the Memorial Day, and there was a person who was trying to bless a woman. She said, no. She was like, please leave me from that, because he was crossing her boundaries. That rejection stirred something in him because he was veteran, and then he started sitting and talking and telling his story. So I was afraid to show him that I listened. I was crying. I was afraid to show him that I listened. We had soldiers there. And later I just told his story on Facebook because I felt like that voices needed to be delivered. He was just telling his stories that nobody appreciates. So I just, use it as a testimonial for Memorial Day to honor this person's story. But I was afraid to show him that I listen because I'm also a woman. At least from his visibility side, okay, what he sees is a woman. When both a woman and a man, it doesn't matter. He sees a woman. And I was afraid he would cross his boundaries, because what triggered that was the rejection that he got from a woman. He probably trying to have a conversation, trying to this, trying to that. So he did it through a blessing, and she said, well, no, like leave me alone. And then, he told his story, and then he started swearing other people that, authors and so, that were also veterans and had CPTSD. But I was afraid for him to cross my boundary. And so I wasn't able to show him that I listen to him, that I care about what he says, because I was afraid he will cross my boundaries. Okay. At that time, that woman just sat in front of another man, and that man helped her out. And then, he went down from the bus, and at the end of the ride, and then there were soldiers there, and they're like, it's like I was speaking to a soldier, kind of like I was afraid to show him, because he saw that I was crying. And I was like, I was afraid to show him because I was afraid that he will cross my boundaries. Okay, but then boundary. So, but I was afraid to take that risk because I'm a Me Too veteran altogether. It was like you're choosing your battles. And so each and every one person in the crowd probably has a story. But from that to cheering up when a person is dying, so this situation is kind of like a nuclei of something that is being shown to us as humanity. And I'm sure there were more stories like that around the world where it's up for us, the people, to do the right thing. That now there is no grown adult, there is no police officer, there is no governor, there is nobody. There is how can we as people help this person right now? What can we do in favor of the situation? Because the power is now in our hands, and how certain people can feel so abandoned in this situation. Think about people who are having experiences of being marginalized by society, or humiliated, or having a oh, people not talking to them or something like that. Um, and how that affects a person. And there are many stories of people who actually became to be group leaders. I'm not gonna point people out because I don't want to take the voice from another person, so I don't feel like that's okay to give a concrete story. There is such a concrete story now in our community, but if you know, then you know. If you've read, then you've read. Um, and how sometimes people can take that situation of having gone through isolation or even humiliation by society, and then actually coming up or rising up as a person that gives power, that gives enlightenment, that gives good things to humanity. Um, and how that can literally haunt a person for like decades to come. I know that the criticism over the Me Too movement was that we gave this experience to people. However, it's usually the case that we were the target of this humiliation, and then we flipped the coin. Okay, we flipped the table. It's kind of like, no, we are not going to stand here and be isolated. We're going to put our satire out. We're going to put our art out. We're going to put our songs out. We're going to put our dance out. We're going to dance about it, talk about it, sing about it, bring another day. But the people who had this table flipped on them, then they felt it's like a return to sender. They felt all that they planned for us. Now they are being humiliated. And then there was this question when you write a satire, how do I pinpoint the behavior? Like I put to ridicule the behavior without putting to ridicule the person. So my way to deal with that was also to laugh at my own place in the situation, and to kind of like expose myself, not just expose the people that I'm exposing. Because eventually, what I wanted to bring healing for is healing for the circumstances and healing for me. Um, and it's those kind of flips, like, hey, the tables are now turning, and we the people have certain power. What we also need to be aware, and I'm going to talk about that, there is, for those of you who are like, what's going on with Israel? It's like, what's going on with the entire world? But um, in our country, which I'm living in right now, so I know a bit more, there is a person that began his career by doing certain pogroms, which is violent attacks. Okay, he was involved in violent attacks, and that was supposedly trying to take his power as a Jew within a society that was not exactly pro-Jews. So he chose violence, like, like you say in English, he chose violence. And now he's in the government and he's a minister of security, I think internal security. So one of the things that he was calling to pass was a law that suggests that if a husband threatens to murder the wife, which unfortunately happens a lot here across cultures, it's not like it happens in this society, in that society, then he will have this electronic chain on his foot or something like that, where they can know his location so that he wouldn't come close to this woman. And that's a law, like it won't save all the cases, like these women still need a place to go to. As a person who said no to certain violence that I witnessed during COVID. Like we still need a place to be that is not a place where you lock up a person that just chose freedom and chose life. Like this is not going to happen. Like we're not going to settle for that. Um, and and that law was a law that was suggested by feminist organizations that many were calling to support. And it's not surprising that it's just the most right wing person that was involved with guerrilla, which beyond guerrilla, like literally beyond guerrilla, that would call in to approve this law. And this is something that happens a lot, okay? The left suggests all kinds of rules and regulations, and it's a right wing government or governor or leader that says, okay, we're going to give you that. We're going to give you that. So, and that is really up to us, the people. What do we do to live the day after the revolution, which I said 1,000 times? It's a concept that I was taught by a person who I became Me Too veteran because of. Okay? Well, so what do we do to live the day? And as I was working, I was thinking about the day after the revolution and what do I do want there to happen to live this day today? How do we live today, the day after the revolution? Because if you are constantly reactive, then you need a reaction. If you're a reactionary person, then you're going to be putting yourself in all these situations. Um, and sometimes there's also honoring that part of you that is reactionary and is revolutionary. Okay, I have Uranus in the 10th house. Whatever the situation is, I will venture to the place that needs to be revolutionized, not even reformed, but here it's revolutionized with Uranus, and I'll go there. Like I'm gonna tackle that. I tackled this, okay, now I'll tackle that, now I'll tackle that. So it's honoring the part and the people of us that are revolutionary, that are reactionary, as well as honoring the people that are traditional and conservative. So one story that basically my offender told us was the British Parliament and the voting, where women voted for the left party in order to get their voting rights, and after that they voted for conservatives. So he was not criticized. You would expect like, oh, he's a male, he's going to criticize. But no, he was actually pointing the intelligent point about this. He said, no, women were not stupid. They understood that the left does changes. And when they got the right to vote, they wanted to maintain the right to vote, so they chose the conservative. Yeah, there are situations where you want to be revolutionary, and there are situations where you want to preserve. Pluto playing here between the revolutionary, let's make changes, blah, 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 and preservation. Because the day after the revolution is the day that you can vote for the Conservative Party when you think about this, right? It's like the day where you say, well, I want this tradition. I want this to be the tradition. The tradition in France is that if you raise the prices of meat or of whatnot or food, people leave it at the store and go out to the street. And the next time you can't do it anymore, you have to find another way so that people can get food. That's a tradition. Okay, it's on the blue pill, red pill. This is red pill. Okay, this is the conservative way to deal with things now in France. It's the conservative way. And for us in Israel, they raise the price of milk and then they raise it again. And I made a satire about the person that's coming to buy, chocolate for his son, and the cashier says, well, no, this chocolate is only 2 shekels if you buy in 100 shekel. And he said, well, then give me some milk. Okay, which is like $100 for an American. So it's that satire coming to life, because the way we deal with that is Israel is just like, well, I'm not going to revolt against my child. I'm just going to buy the milk and suck it up. And in France, it's like, no, I'm going to take my child to the street and we're all going to demonstrate. We're going to leave that milk at the store and we're going to show this child that we're going to go and we're going to go out to the street and we're going to do something about it, and that milk price is going to go down. Miraculously, solutions are found. And like as Israelis, we are changing this tradition a bit. It's a revolution to change this tradition. It's a revolution to go out to the street and demonstrate. So Pluto retrograde shows us like you got power. Now you got, if you go out en masse and you do it, it happens, it changes. It won't be the same. And you also got to shake off your, oh, there's nothing I can do about this. Because during Pluto and Capricorn, during the last 200 years, okay, we had a generational growing with, oh, there's nothing I can do to change the world. I just have to live with this. And sometimes there are things where like, okay, I'll just have to live with this. Okay, if you're living with your loved one, if somebody's going to live with me, they know that they're living with a person that has this side of them that is reactionary. Hey, this girl is always going to find something that needs to be revolutionized in our world, and she's going to put herself into it like it's life or death. And it's just the person that I'm living with. I can like it about her. She's not gonna get traditional. And every time she does this, she's living the day after the revolution right now. So that's something that's a stable, that's a constant in her life. Every once in a while, the very thing that kept her center is going to be revolutionized, and she's going to live the day after the revolution right now, and trying to make peace with everybody in ways that would not shame U.S. after Pearl Harbor. This is my partner. Okay, you can say and that's something that you probably are not able to change. You gotta accept that. So that's the kind of irony and tyranny that Pluto gives us. And sometimes it's like, okay, you gotta accept that, or I gotta accept it about myself. Every once in a while, my entire life is going to be revolutionized. And it's true. So there is a part in me that will always advocate for the people that don't have a voice. There's a part in me that will always do that in some way, shape, or form. Even if the reason they didn't have a voice was me. So it's just who I am. Okay? When I had, my colleague had a lawyer, and that lawyer was screaming at court like whatnot. And she was getting what she needs to get across at court. And she was screaming at my client, at her client, and the client was like, but why are you screaming at me? It was like, darling, I'm screaming at people. The reason you want me as your lawyer is because I'm going to scream like an animal at court. That's me. Like, yes, I'm screaming at you, but I'm also screaming for you. I'm also advocating for you. And that's something about we the people that we kind of need to acknowledge and give place for ourselves to just be, and give place to the things that we cannot change. And you know what? Even I don't know, like feng shui is like my future hope. But if you even if you have 400 acres of land, and at the 401 acre, okay, your doggy ate the neighbor's grass, and he's gonna get to the 401, believe me. Then you got a conflict with the neighbors. So some of it is structure, some of it is space, and some of it is we, the people. Um, like I'm being kind of told this reasonable thing, like there are always going to be something with the neighbors. Just always like we're humanity. I'm like, I don't have a regulation for that. I need peace. And that peace looks like U.S. after Pearl Harbor. But that is the kind of situation where we are faced with our power as the people, what we can accept and what we need to change. And also, just as we cannot accept what we cannot accept, uh, and sometimes it's really about creating a new tradition where we do tend to it. We do tend to it. Something happening, we do something about this. As humanity. Um, because we're going to hail the person that does something about it no matter what is it the thing that they do. If we go back to the story about the person in the train, that they were just not having this anymore. They wanted to change. They definitely wanted something to change. And they were going and making this like big mess in the train. then the person that did something about it, whatever it is that they did, people hailed him. And what he did was killing this homeless person. It's like he did the worst thing possible. And this is also when we talk about revolutionary leaders. Um, because we're going to have a lot of them. We're going to have a lot of revolutionary leaders. The other side of Aquarius, somebody is making a really nice shake out there. Right now, it's noise. But later, I'm going to tell them thank you because it's going to be very tasty. Anyway, so we're going to have a lot of people, and the other pole of Aquarius is the soul, sun, Leo. That's the leader, that's the Regulian leader. So we're going to have a lot of ardor, passionate leaders of the masses. And those people can be as crazy, like we've seen them. Okay? We admire the person, we worship the person that leads up, that's the first person to take a stance in this chaotic situation. Thank you. And we tend to praise this person because they saved the day. If I think about the Capricorn Cancer, I think about the mothers that call for their children to not have to serve in the army, or the mothers that interfere in a conflict that the country has because it's their babies that are serving and dying in this conflict. So hey, like you listen to the voice of the mothers. And so it's kind of like the mother father. Okay, the Saturn, the stern figures, like this is the world. People live on the sword and so on and so forth. Why is Mars exalted in Capricorn? For this reason. And then there is the voice of the moon, the voice of the mothers, like we gave you life. You don't take this life here for no reasons. You don't make manipulations with this life. Yes, we're going to speak up. If I look at the Aquarius and Leo, then Aquarius is the people. And Leo is the leader from the people, for the people. If you think about a king, a good king is a servant of the people. And then we have a good king. You don't wonder about it too much. You say, well, Morocco has a relatively good king. He went through the Arab Spring. He made the changes that were needed to do in the nation. But one day, that king hopefully will die a natural death, and they have a successor. Now I have to worry about the successor. Is the successor is going to be as good as the previous king? Is he going to do even more changes? Or is he or she are going to actually be devastating for the people? And in ancient astrology, you hear about eclipses. It's a thing that the solar eclipse takes the sun, and the lunar is more connected and felt by the people, which is the case today. Um, and so the polarity of Saturn ruled Aquarius and Sun ruled Leo is that leader that is for the people, by the people, but can be as a crazy tyrant when they get the power. And you say, well, power corrupts. I don't think that power corrupts so much as that it's energy. If you concentrate so much energy, this energy needs to spread out. And what is eclipse? Something is being, like the light is not being seen, but then it shines in a different new way, and then we change our point of view. You think about it like a black hole. It's not a black hole, but it looks like it. Because what happens in a black hole, everything gets sucked in and decomposes, and then it emits light, and light comes out. And this is how light and frequency is related to gravity, okay? Because the sunction of gravity has a frequency, and that frequency can be seen. It is light. So gravity can be seen in a black hole. From the scientific point of view, we're going to have a lot of awareness, a lot of ability to observe these phenomena way better than we had before. A lot of technology kind of, and understanding, taking an insight from the technology. So the philosophy, the religion, the technology, they kind of intermesh. And the revolution is all together, okay? It's a scientific revolution, it's a political revolution, it's a religious revolution. Yet understanding we need new religions, or we need reforms on the certain religion. Because if your religion tells you that you have had this experience as a child because you did something terrible in the past, when I think about this, I think about, well, I don't want the doctor that tried to kidnap me when I was 9 years old. And if not for a family member that stopped him, and me as a 9 year old hearing the doctor says what to the person that saved me, basically, then why are you interfering? And from that, why are you interfering? I realized that yes, this person is really like I'm not imagining. As a young child, I understood that this person is probably the worst pedo ever, because he was telling this, my family member, why are you interfering when they say when I was saved. So people would look at it, well, nothing happened. Yeah, but we also didn't immediately have the wisdom to like stop him, arrest him, sue him, and save more children. I can try to set the magical intention for this, but there's also, hey, this huge system. Okay, so we have all these sudden insights and being aware. Like, I don't, sorry, I got into a bit of a dissociation. I don't remember what I spoke about in the last minute. Like, I got here and it was like, it's both Mercury retrograde and it's like, okay, I was speaking about a traumatic event when I was 9 years old. So I forgot everything now. It's something that happens when you talk about trauma. Um, it's just like, mind you, I was hurt also in therapy. So it's not like I have a way to process this other than, do what I do. So those kinds of situations, and I don't know how to connect the dots. Now, what did I say? Everything went blank. Well, I was talking about science and how those changes. Oh, we need new religions. Oh, and I said I don't want this doctor to have in his next life to incarnate as a child that is going through the same thing that I went through. It's like there's no point in that. There's no point in him suffering as a child in his next incarnation. It's not going to do good for humanity. So the religion that tells me that whatever happened to me happened because I did something in past life, and so now in this life he did something, and now in next life he will be a child that like me. No, no, no. We need another religion. We need another set of faith. We need another because our religion and our spiritual experience also contribute to shaping our near-death experience. Okay, it's like we are evolving, but it's like that affects also the passage between worlds and what we are being taught. As a holistic health practitioner, I found sometimes it's very difficult to get through to people who are Westerners because they're like, no, I don't want to hear about anything that tells me that I'm to blame for my ailment. And I'm like, I'm not telling you this. But the thing is that a lot of my practices were grown in contexts where people were being blamed for the things that happened to them. Like they did something in the past and now this is their karma. And I'm like, no, this is not the part. First of all, like to make clear, this is not a part of my praxis. Like, and so I don't care who you were in your past life. I'm receiving you today and we are thinking together what can be done. Where is the point where you can interfere in your favor? And this is also in the favor of humanity. Like whoever you were, if you are doing good in this life, and you're doing good right now, then you're doing good for you and for humanity. Whoever you were. The other alternative is that people say, well, the people who are vile, they kind of serve a purpose, and we have this yin and yang, and so that category is also something we need to rejuvenate on, because it's not the only point of view. Um, it's not only the snake that is biting its own tail. But then I see, if I look at my structure, the building, it's like, oh, if we made the back wall clear, then maybe we will have, and the directions right, maybe we will have more peace with the neighbors. Maybe there's something I can do even in my own apartment. And I'm like, yeah, go, yeah, let's see what can we do. Um, so we are having all these thoughts and ponderings and changes of view, um, and understanding that the engineering of society um, is going through a certain test right now, and the algorithms that we're thinking about. Also, when you think about decentralized social media, okay, there was this question about, hey, are you feel comfortable with the fact that The moderator in Mastodon can read your DMs. And some people say, well, I know the moderator, I don't care, which is nice. But then we think about it algorithmically, you're like, yeah, we haven't solved this problem in the new algorithm. And yes, with this moderator, it's okay. And then our answer is like, hey, we can go to another server, but what if the moderators are having this group of network within themselves? Then now no matter where you go to, you're not it's not really decentralized. That's something that we do need to deal with. It doesn't mean that the previous was okay, but it does mean that we need to deal with those things that come up and with those places that come up. And with those places that come up and kind of remind us that we have the power and there are certain things that are within our power to change and we need to tend to them, as well as there are certain pitfalls in taking the hierarchy or being anarchic that we also need to tend to because the social contract thinkers, they're being reiterated right now, a part of them, if you go to Hobbes, were understanding that before we gave power to regime, life here were also chaotic, and so life, as Hobbes describes it, as the lives were short, the life was miserable, and there was nobody. If people were fighting with another, there was nobody to bridge this fighting and this conflict to create order, and then we turned to a higher force, be it God, be it king, or be it the government or the police or whatnot. And so this is something that we are being reminded of as Pluto is just retrograding in his first degree in Aquarius. And the first degree, if I'm not mistaken, and I think Dan waits for this, are the term of Mercury. I believe they are the rulership of Saturn, the deacon of Saturn, and the term of Mercury. So Mercury is communication, it's public transportation. We see this event happening on public transportation. It's trade. So, and people say, well, maybe some bank will collapse. Yes, I think it's beyond that. I think it's about the replacement system, and I always go back to the analogy of Capricorn versus Aquarius as being ruled by Saturn, by Austin Kapak, where he said Capricorn is being locked in, Aquarius is being locked out. So when you think about your passports, and your passwords. Um, if a person has a passport, okay, I was without passport, then they basically what should have been done is like, can you give us your fingerprint? Oh, this fingerprint. Oh, you're a citizen of Netherlands. It's no problem. Okay, your biometric passport, but things could happen with that because A, somebody could hack into the system and change the fingerprints, and B, I was not asked that to begin with. So, but it's like people went way over their head to get the application paper of when I was 16 and I applied for a passport. It's like my mother applied for me even. Um, and my father acknowledged me. So that was like, oh, this is crazy. We saw that what saved us was not this big technology, but actually the fact that the documents were kept in this Saturn quality inside an institution. And so the technology was not saving me. Nobody asked for my fingerprint, but actually the kindness of people that were doing the best they can to reach the embassy and kind of feed me while I'm there and try to do the best to help me at the border control. Even though I don't look the least bit of Dutch, I do have that name, um, and try to see what they can do for me. It's like so I can be thankful for that. But then when you think about you're left without a passport, and then when I was sent to shelter, then people sent me to the immigration, and the person at the immigration, when he saw I'm Dutch, was like, "But why are they sending you to the immigration? You are Dutch." Okay, and you have this in between worlds, and I got to experience some of the experiences of people who are refugees in Netherlands, or not refugees because refugees have organizations, but the people who are kind of left without a place that can help them, without a nation that can help them. Um, and so this is the Aquarius, and Saturn was in my 12th house in Aquarius, and I was being refugee in my fatherland, not acknowledged as refugee. And it did so much everything so that when I was supposed to meet the municipality after waiting for a very long time, the shelter was closing so that I will not be able to meet the municipality and get my rights. And this tells me that I have more rights that I know of in this country because they would not have gone this much to kick me out of there, not because of me, but because they just try to avoid providing for the rights because there is a housing crisis, and it's like you have rights, but to enforce them is a problem because like they need to find you a house, and now they're oh there's just another person that wants a house, but they're like also Israelis. Send them back to Israel. Just be dealing with war and conflict and whatnot. Um, and does not supply. And for the Israel perspective, it's like, okay, your guys are doing everything to literally kill anybody who says no to violence. It's like I escape domestic abuse in a way. And like all I wanted was to find my own clear space, none to be existing. No space. And I'm like, and I was thinking about men, even the men who are violent to other wife. And I said, let's say it was the man who would leave and say, okay, I don't want to kill my wife. I don't want to do this. Now I'm very angry. I'm very stressed. What I need is a place to relax, to go, and where I can just relax. If he has no money, there is no place for him. So women are being killed not just because there are these violent, crazy men, but also they don't really have a place to go to. When they say, okay, I don't want to kill my wife. I don't want to kill my wife. I also don't want to be in jail. I want to be on the beach in a tent and have that a safe place to be. When I was in between houses, I didn't ask for housing. I didn't ask for housing. I told the police, make the street, safeguard the street, make the street a safe place to be. Because even when you talk about real estate, eventually you're looking for the apartment where even if you had to sleep in the street, it would be safe for you. Sometimes they put food and shelter for the street cats and street dogs. Okay, and I saw it in Tel Aviv. I almost donated money for. It was funny. I was going, and I had some money. I thought I was nearing a homeless person, and I wanted to put money there. And then I see it's food for the cats, so I almost donated money to the to the cats. Basically, I should have put that money there, and somebody would find it that probably needs it, but. If we make the street safe, then the real estate is very good. Because if it's safe to live here, and if it's safe to go, if it's safe for a little boy or girl to go in the middle of the night or to sleep there and nothing will happen, then you're living in a pretty darn good neighborhood. This is the best thing you could do to raise your real estate value. Tend to those homeless people. Make the street safe. Tend to the homeless people. Like, I didn't even ask for housing. I just said, well, just make sure that the place where I sleep is safe. I didn't ask for anything. I'll shower at the beach. Okay, I do need food. So if I have a place where I can get food and I don't get harassed and I don't get people trying to look all kinds of information about me, or people trying to boss me or anything like that, it's like I'm not your trouble. And in the meantime, I meditate. I'll take care for myself and do all that. They're looking at me like, we can't do this. But it's like, but you're the police. You're being paid to do this. You're being paid to like, I don't ask for you to be my welfare. Just do the thing that you're being paid to do, which is safeguard the street. So the street is safe. And if I know that the street is safe, and they're both men and women cops and so on and so forth, gay clubs, religious clubs, whatnot, and I know the street is safe, then I can negotiate and find a flat that actually fits me and my needs. That was what I was insistent on. Um, and so a part of the housing crisis is also outside. What happened when a person, and if I think about why do I not hold a Bitcoin right now, okay, because I think I would need money. It's like I need at least 1,000 shekels, which is like $100 for an American, to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatnot. And so I'm not in a position where I have this money and I can just forget it. Because if I put 1,000 shekels for me, it's a very high where I am. So my opinion about these coins is that you need to put your money there and just forget it. Like people do shorts and this and that, and like I hail these people. I don't know how to do this, but my opinion is like we are heading towards more digitized for type of currency anyway. And so you just put your money there and forget it. Like you might buy a house with it someday. Some people did. You might buy pizza with that someday, or you might have that as a nice memory that and story that you can share and has a value as artistic value. Okay, like an old coinage that you have in your possession. This is my opinion about this, and again, I'm just a human being. But the thing is that if I wanted to do more than just put money there and forget that, I would have to face the situation where if I don't have my passport with me or my phone died or this or whatnot, there goes the money. Maybe if I pay very expensive insurance, I have some chances to save some of it, but this is the problem of the Saturn of Aquarius, is being locked out. Okay? That homeless that entered that train, his problem was not that he was entering a government structure. He was not locked inside the jail. He was not locked in, like, he was trying to get in, to do time in order to get food and shelter. So he was locked out. It's like, okay, now I have no food, I have no this, I have no that, like enough is enough. And then he died by the people. And so this is the pitfall of Aquarius. Here's the power of the people. And we definitely need to at least tend to it. Because we are being called to do something about this. So that both our governors or people, a Capricorn ruled people, will be just and will be true, and that we the people also have solutions for where, like when the government cannot help. Okay, huge crisis when the government cannot help, and I'm not talking about even manipulation or power. There are cases, even the best of cases. Okay, or even if I say if I would feed like the neighbors around me, then I would be this person who's like, the officer that you turn to, like for food. And I was like, oh, I can raise potatoes. But then something happened with the neighbor, and that affected me and triggered me, and I could not be in the house for a couple of days that I couldn't water my plants. So I couldn't water my crops. Okay, what happens when I'm not there? So it's kind of like I'm being shown, like, hey, before you set yourself and put yourself in such a high power position that you're so centered, basically, kids, my blind spot is so centered around me because nobody is doing that I know of in my neighborhood that's growing food in this way. Um, and so that was, hey, what happens if I'm not there? Let's say a person is sick, or maybe something like happy times. Maybe, I don't know, my relatives in Netherlands have a new baby coming or some wedding and they want to invite me over. Who is going to take care of my enterprise when I'm not here? So I must make it not dependent on me. It's kind of reminded that, hey, this is a business just as any business, and you're going to be an employee in your business anyhow. This is why when I'm thinking about building my own wealth, I'm thinking about building the enterprise or building the corporation or the company that I would be proud and safe and happy to be an employee in, or building the country that I will be happy to be a citizen in, whoever I am. I guess using the veil of ignorance. That in any case I will be happy. When I think about what do I do, this is why I wrote my satire. Because, and not that this is the best solution. Would I be happy to be isolated and have my blind spot thrown at me and you like that being a joke? Probably not. But would I like to be sued? Or would I like to be, I don't know, murdered or whatnot? Also not. Like I don't say that I did the best solution, but I did the best that I could see. And and what I was thinking about is trying to put the veil of ignorance about this. And yes, it was happening when there were gender studies teachers or lecturers. There were women, cis or not cis, I don't know. They were also sexually harassing male students. Like yes, of course it, and like of course it happens. It's a structural thing. Okay, so when you put the veil of ignorance of it, you want to create a structure where everyone can thrive in. And you also want to be aware, because the veil of ignorance is kind of being aware that we want to create a situation where you are not being discriminated against, but you also want to have your needs met. And then you do need the patient specific. You do need to understand. For example, if you have womb, and the signs that you have are going to have heart attack are completely different than if you have a penis. And you think, what's that to do with anything? Well, apparently it alters the hormones and it alters the type of signals that your body sends. And so women are being dismissed as hysterical, or people with wombs are being dismissed as hysterical, while men are being tended to and saved from heart attacks. Okay. And I had that, I had a neighbor that had heart attack, and she did not know what it is. So she went to hospital. She went by public transportation. She was having a heart attack. Okay, she went through public transportation. She's working, and she was working for the Ministry of Health. And she was going to the doctor, and she was like, "Well, I don't know. I feel this bad feeling getting." So she was not. She was like she was in pain, but she was not stressed. She didn't understand what's going on. So she took the bus, and she was like, darling, you're having a heart attack. And the preliminary signs were different, and they managed to save her life. And I hope she's not taking beta blockers, but because this is something that they give to kind of shut the system from signaling, because a heart attack is a signal of distress. So to shut any anxiety or even vomiting that they give it also to cancer patients after they having chemo. So they give this thing, and there's like, it sounds reasonable. It's like, we're gonna shut the system part that screams help, because we don't want the person to have a heart attack or the person to have nausea. But it also genuinely shushes out the system, and then the next time they just die. There are no preliminary signs before the next heart attack, and then you just die. So this is also something to kind of keep in mind. And I think it's also on a medical level, it's going to come up with the Pluto Aquarius as well, because the other polarity is the sun, and especially for people who deal with heart related condition, that can also be mental, because if you have a heart break, then you can be physically at risk for ailment, heart related disease, but you can also be at risk for a mental crisis. And then you say, oh, this person is having non-dual experiences, so they're psychotic, we give them this pill or certain pills, and then those pills are having anxiety. They also give antipsychotics to people who have high anxiety. So they give you a pill that has beta blockers. It shuts down your anxiety, right? Because it shuts down the signals of the body that call for help. This is anxiety. The body is calling for help. And what happens is that the next time, first of all, your body can't contain it. It tries to pushes everything out. And on the other hand, even the things that are contracting in your body, so you have convulsions, so people having contractions of muscles that are involuntarily and they need to move, they need to shake this out, or they have constipation. And unfortunately, there is also the case where people are not being allowed medical help when they have it. I seen it in my eyes. A woman was dealing with constipation. The doctor was saying it cannot be from the pill, and she had to go to an extreme situation so that they take her to the hospital even when her family was visiting her. Okay, and this was you know, and because there are so many class lawsuits against these companies, class lawsuits win, and they still do that. My complaint is not that you still use a certain product, because you can say, okay, this is trial and error. You can inform the patient, you can be very sensitive, and you can tend to it if there is, God forbid, a crisis. But actually, there's so much gaslighting around this, and the choice of the patient is not respected. I do use the word patient because I believe that the patient has to be really patient with the people that try to help, because we don't know you the way you know you. Okay, your medical staff or your healers or your holistic health practitioners, they don't know you, or your astrologers, they don't know you as well as you know you. Only you can tell how does it apply to you. And we need to listen. So we may know processes, and then it can give us the illusion that we know you more than you, because we've seen the process of what happens when a person is grieving, or we've seen the process of what happens so and so. But it doesn't matter that we've seen a process. Right now, you know you in a certain way, and you can surprise us because you can come up with something that we haven't seen before. And that's always kept in mind. When I was working for a credit card company, then we had customers trying to get a credit card. And then I had a series of people trying to get a credit card, and I did not know how the credit score works. But I saw that they were not approved, that they had problem with the credit. So the next person that called me up, after you have, 5, 6, 7 of these people, the next person that calls me up, they tell me the same story, and I'm like, oh, come on. And I repent that, because that person really had a story there, and that was a mistake. I was still with the screen from the previous person. And I'm like, oh shit. you know? This is what happens when you go to your medical stuff. They see all kinds of cases, and then you come up, and they're like, oh, we know this. Oh, shit. We've been sleeping. This bias of this repetition that's being interrupted. So, yeah, we're going to probably see more also about the medical aid for people with heart-related issues and anxiety or nervous system related issues. So the kind of treatment that we give to people who have nervous system issues. That does mean that a lot of people are going to get into those circumstances where they have heart related issues and nervous system related issues. Because the way we view it needs to be composted, which is also something that is ruled by Pluto. So it's this black hole that emits light. So that's another thing I have to say. This Pluto transition, and I thank S.J. Anderson for noting that this Pluto transition is going to lasting 18 months until Pluto finally ingresses in 2024. Pluto finally ingresses to Aquarius. It's like the for good stage, and this 18 months period. We are doing the things that will set up the next 20 years for humanity. And we are being shown, oh, there's this thing you need to take into account. There's this thing. So each and every one of us is being an algorithm person in their own merit, and usually by self-studies. Like we have to algorithmically tend to our lives, transitioning from tending to the hierarchy or the regime or changes in the regime to tending to the people. And if I look at my life, then I have Saturn, the ruler of the 12th house, and the 11th house in the 9th house. Where did I spend this pre-eclipse period? At the airport. And yeah, I might be at the beach tomorrow. So there's probably another place where I will be in this crossroads between this land and another land. And I will observe what's happening. I was born also in between eclipses. Um, and what was I reading? So I was reading about the story that I opened up with. I was reading about labor, okay, and how people who went through trauma and are menstruating can go through certain traumas in labor, and that can affect how they deal with their children, which also affect humanity. Okay, a lot of the problems of men who are violators are that they are having secondary trauma. They grew up in a certain situation where they did not have a distinct boundaries, a clear boundary that they have a safe place to be, and they were either having this boundary intruded, or being put on a pedestal, or they were seen as a partner, or they were needed to grow. They needed to grow up sooner, or they couldn't grow up, or they needed to stay the eternal child. And now they're considered narcissists. They're considered abusers. They're considered this, and they do behave in ways that risk people's lives. So, so this is also, and we do understand that you cannot just pour love at them. It's not in itself going to heal them, but you also have to take space for yourself. Otherwise, you are enabling this behavior. Um, and so, labor and the relation of mother and child are the source of a lot of psychological teachings and questioning, as well as with this square, right? Um, the structure of society, the society. Because let's say you went from domestic violence. You said, I don't want to be a victim. I also don't want to repeat that. I also don't want to victimize. You go into society. You go into society, and there is a certain part where you need to see, okay, how do I learn to relax and receive love and care? How do I put a prayer out there for the humanity to help me, and that can change my experience? There is also the society that you're running into. Where is there a safe place for me to just be and relax? So sometimes it's the experiences that I create within me, and sometimes there are also structures that need to be transformed so that that would be more accessible. We also grew up in societies, when we talk about relationships, a lot of people describe conflict as something that strengthens their relationship. And so it's like we had no choice, we had to get along together. Or they're giving you marital advice that we do not put divorce on the table no matter what. Okay? And that's a lot of marital advice that I heard from couples who are married for long term. And they're like, hey, it cannot be that this is, and to a certain extent, it's not a bad thing that you don't throw everything out and, you know. Um, However, what happens when a person does need to leave? When a person does need to have a secluded space where they can tend to themselves and they can process whatever happened, then how do we provide for that? Because them not having that does result in families. There's like, oh, there's a crisis. Me and my family won't be able to go anywhere. My kids will end up in human trafficking, raped, or whatnot. My wife, probably the same. The best thing to do is to take this gun, shoot my kids, shoot my wife, shoot myself. And we've seen that happening. We've seen that happening in 2008. Probably we've seen that happening in 2023 too. Um, and those things are happening as well. Okay? When people are being put in situations where divorce is not on the menu, then murder is. And that's pretty fucking scary. And that's pretty fucking non negotiable. That cannot be. Okay, we must change so that the right choice is there. Yes, there are people who are like, crazy, fanatic, whatnot, and there are these cases. But there's also societal structure that supports or disables the right choice from being made. The structure on the train when that person was killed, when that homeless person was killed, was not supporting making the right choice. Okay, it probably was the right thing to do. And after the person puts this person on a chokehold, they kind of like, okay, step out. Like, you've done enough. Thank you very much. Now let's wait for, like, either let's wait for the police, or let's keep this person together in a way that we don't hurt this person, but also we don't we don't let them hurt us. We choose not hurting physically, but it's like, okay, I understand people are afraid for them to do that. But it's not like hurt. It's like, hey, like we get that, like what can be done, and start doing something. What if we said, okay, let's stop our daily routines, and whoever can stay, let's just make a demonstration right here on this train. And you think these things didn't happen? A lot of spontaneous things do happen. A lot of spontaneous revolutions do happen. This spontaneous place where society gathers together to do something good. This also happen. It's also part of the story of the human condition. So yeah, that can happen as well. Um, and there are those inner alchemies in the situation that that do happen. Success is not a solitary praxis. Even the person that you see is like you see a certain face, but beyond that face, there is channeling, there is connections, there is spirit, there is that. One of my posts on Twitter was like, when people mention about how suffering made them a better person, they sometimes omit the part where spirit hugged them and held them and dissipated the desire to nuke humanity. Okay, there are also these stories. Um, So now it's just this transitional phase that is being triggered by eclipses, that we're going to have fated events around this passage of Pluto going retrograde and going over what we have been doing. And my leg was noting to me, and I want to tell a story about my leg. When I was about 9, I think, after what happened to me in the hospital, it was not me being hospitalized. We were visiting my grandmama, and I needed to walk around, and then that happens. So after that, I was going with my dog, and I came back home, and I just wanted to close the door, and so I just gently pushed the door with my leg, but unfortunately, I was pushing over the part that holds the door back from being shut down with violence. And so I was just pushing it a bit faster because I wanted to bring the dog up and I didn't want to leave the door open. And the glass broke on my feet. So, with the part of my feet, it was like this. I can't show it, but maybe I will manage to show it. It's like this part. Um, I climbed 3 floors, and the couple that helped saving me, because there was a person coming from the hospital, but my mother didn't want to drive there, and so the couple of women that helped to save me were two lesbian women. And why is that important? Because I grew up to a house where lesbians were thought to be against nature. So, and forever, whenever the topic of LGBTQ comes, then my parent always has to remember the two lesbian women that saved her daughters from getting, infection in their feet and got her to hospital. She will forever have to remember this. It's nothing that she can do. Whatever this LGBTQ thing comes out, and I don't even have to say anything. She remembers that herself. I didn't even think it was that meaningful. And the other time that I remember I had something with my feet, there was another time when I was going to my psychologist, and I got like I twitched my feet, and then I came back, and then I was sitting there, but I didn't understand what was going on, or what do I need to change in my life, and I still don't know how to delineate that, but maybe it was kind of a red flag, or kind of like I'm not supposed to go to this person, and it was the person that later was violent to me. Um, but there was something to tend into my feet, and I got a lot of messages to tend to my feet, and so on and so forth. And when I was in Netherlands, then during the shelter, I could not sleep because we were being put a couple of people in the room, and we were all snoring, and I could not sleep. Like, and I remember I was talking to the security guy, and I was telling him, it is so devastating. It's like, this place is such a beautiful place. They put us in a hostel that was genuine, a hostel for travelers, for tourists. And I'm like, we're being treated very respectfully. We've been put in this hostel. We get food, like, and we get this room, this comfortable room. And it is so funny that the reason that I cannot sleep, that I'm almost like, I think I won't, I'm going to die, is just we are snoring. It's something so simple, and it's literally a life or death. And I was like, oh my god, I didn't even understand this. This is why a person would need, let's say, a separate room. And so I was traveling black the other day, and then I came back, and then on the train, back on the tram, I just crossed the tram, crossed it very quickly, and I fell and I twitched my feet. And then what happened is that I was put in a separate room. And not only that, they closed the shelter a day afterwards, so there was a car coming to move me from this shelter to the other shelter, to Transformatorweg. And and then Transformatorweg was a jail that was transferred into a shelter. Okay, 12 house, 12 house, 12 house, 12 house. And I had my own separate room. And I had the frankincense incense. And not only that, in the person that was sleeping, I'm not sure if it was my room or not, he was also homeless, and he told me that he was 4 years in this jail as a teenager because he stabbed someone who came to stab him. He used the knife of somebody who came to stab him. He was in the street, and he stabbed him in the rear place. And of course he killed him. So um, he was in jail for 4 years. He was like, this is my thing. So everybody expects you in Netherlands to get to be on your own and to make it on your own. You gotta make it here on your own. And it's very good to support the ability of a person to do stuff on their own and to not be codependent, but it comes to gaslighting, it's becoming over. And of course, I was thinking, this is the country where my father grew up in. Okay, so he was expected to be always to be able to do everything on his own, because that's the reality of life there. And when I was homeless, he was like sharing my posts, and it was kind of like showing a picture of a tent. It's like wherever you are, this is your home, and so on and so forth. Um, and that was the reality of the place. There is a stressful situation with housing in Netherlands, and so even my family could not help me. And the culture is that you're supposed to make it on your own. So to some extent, this is very good, and to some extent, it kind of puts you in certain situations that are impossible situations. Or that kid that made it on his own, he protected himself from somebody coming to steal his money, being a kid in the street. So when he was homeless in the street, and so he was being put to jail for 4 years, and they did not help him rehabilitate in the sense that he was still homeless. Okay, so it's kind of like a part of it is you need to make it on your own, and a part of it is that we are not, success is not a solitary praxis. Um, so it's like, and then globally, if a person escapes certain violent situations or they need to take space, probably their family is not who can help now, otherwise they wouldn't turn to anyone. And sometimes you have to turn to the welfare, and you have to say, well, I don't have a family, I don't have this, otherwise they will not help you, and your family alone cannot sustain that. Because you do need some sort of help that is outside the family, unless you have great generational wealth and kind people. So sometimes they have kind people, but you don't have the wealth to sustain you. And then sometimes there is a conflict, there is an issue, there is something maybe intergenerational that you need to tend to, and you need a place to be. Um, so, yeah, we are dealing in this situation of, and that takes me back to my first day in Amsterdam, where I took the wrong, like I took the train, and I missed the station that was supposed to take me to the shelter. So I was one day with no shelter, and it was lockdown. So I was in the street, and I was trying to kind of warm myself and do this, kind of dances, martial arts, and whatnot. And I was singing to warm myself. And there were the people in the houses being locked in. They were not allowed to go out, and they went out. And then there are the people who are homeless, and they were being locked out because it wasn't 0 degrees yet. There were the shelters of the gemeente, but the GGG, which was the public health stuff. Um, but if you weren't found by these people or by the police, then you weren't taken to these places. And the police was doing everything to get you away, like to tell you that the shelter is 14 minutes walk when it's 14 minutes drive. So I was there, and I was thinking, yeah, I am in the street, freezing cold. Okay, it was not below 0 degrees that would kill me, but it was still freezing cold, and I come from a very sunny country. And I was in the street thinking about, oh, I am now out. Okay, there is no place that I can stay in and be safe. Okay, because shelters not all are safe. And while I am in this situation, I'm standing in front of buildings where people live inside and they're not allowed to come in. And the only reason that I had shelter in these degrees that were above 0 degrees was because of the global pandemic. And the person was an old woman that was helping me. She was very concerned about the global pandemic. She was so afraid, but also she wanted the lockdown to be over, but also she kind of wanted for me to have a shelter and those situations. Um, because the GGG were literally helping us just because they wanted the homeless to not spread disease, but they forced us to go out in the day. So there were a lot of really weird situations, and the whole way that people think that somebody who's homeless denies help because we already know they're going to put us in a place where we're not safe. Well, they're going to do something that's trying to recruit us to all kinds of places where it's not, you don't want us to be. Like, you don't want us to be in those places. Um, which you do see in shelters. Okay, people asking if you have a job, or people that are saying that they are nurses and are staying in the shelter, and they tell you that they work and they keep the money in Germany. And I'm like, you know, they're not like, they cannot be a nurse in a global pandemic that does not have shifts at work, that whose shifts were canceled at work because they don't need nurses in a global pandemic. Like, this, something doesn't sit in. Or a person that comes to you with the KLM ticket and wagon, this suitcase that's like the pink suitcase. And this man that maybe he liked pink suitcases started asking you if you have a job, and you're like, okay. you know and that nurse tells him, oh, he's a snitch, he's a this, you're a rat. And I'm like, what is this shit show? So those are also situations that you run into, and you're being exposed to how those people that you think are organized crime are also working with the government. Okay, that person that tried to recruit me, who was working with the police, basically, um, that person was literally telling me, we're working with the police, we're working with the government. If you try to escape, then if they see you without a ticket on the train, then they make blame, okay? They make problems. And I was like, okay, she's going to put me into a human trafficking apartment. She went right, I went left. And I was Dutch. Okay, so she thought I don't like, this is like, I'm white in America, okay? But I'm not white in Netherlands. Like, yeah, this is brown here. So like, I don't look, in this brown eyes, I don't look Dutch. Okay, it is a Jewish nose. I don't look Dutch. But the thing is that she thought that I'm an immigrant and I am also citizen. So I got into this to see the point of view of, like, her telling me, well, you're gonna have to pay €1,000 for the passport. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, I'm Dutch. Or, I have so many SIM cards in my apartment. Why do you have so many SIM cards in your apartment? Oh, we have this only black, only soft drugs. We put it, but it's black. And I'm like, but Netherlands has legalized marijuana. Why would you have a black, business around it? You don't need me. You don't need to be illegal if that's all your business does. And suddenly you have cameras, and the lady brings on Monday, she brings lingerie, and I'm going to put you in pajamas where it's nearly 0 degrees. And I'm like, okay. And you can't go out, and it's building that belongs to the company. So, and she was wearing clothes for her, and she was working. I was a whole shift with her, and she was working, switching the street with her colleague that was getting a booster shot on that Friday, 23rd of um, December 2021. Okay? It doesn't matter what her name was. Her name was Galupina. Okay, and Galupina is like a stage name. Maybe the name was for somebody else. It doesn't matter who the name was. And it doesn't matter who she was, because if she was taken as an immigrant and was told, you either recruit people or you are being trafficked yourself, what will she choose? What will she choose? So I'm not gonna put my hate on this one girl. Just working with the police, just working with the government. And who was the person that I could speak with about this? Peter de Vries. He was shot 5 times in the June, before I came to Amsterdam. And when we think about, oh, we want to decentralize and we want to solve the corruption of the regime, and when we think about, oh, we want to solve the corruption of organized crime, okay, those are locked outside the regime, those two are working together. So what do we do when we get the powers, we, the people? Do we take this, this Galubina, and we say, okay, like, we're gonna kill this Galubina, okay, we have, well, we done one person. What was she to do? What was she to do? If she's being told you're either gonna recruit people or you're going to be violated for the rest of your life, she's gonna recruit people. Nobody from the police, from Polaris, from the government, from everybody, and I turned to everybody, was giving me update on that case. They had all the details. All the details. Everything. And one day name called Galubina, the next day the person can be called another name, the next day can be called another name. What is Galubina? It's a stage name, it's not a real name of a person even. Very likely, right? And this particular day, particular date, the shift was shorter and she was calling in, she's moving earlier because the partner was taking a booster shot and they switched the streets because he liked that other side of the street and see who was taking booster shots, so they were leaving, both were leaving even earlier. So many particulars about this shift. Is not very difficult to find a person, to understand where do they live and to get this flat. Not difficult. But the person who could do this is no longer with us. So, um, all these things that I think about when I'm asking myself. And when we are attending to it, because right now there's so many refugees, there's so many people who are in these situations. There's so many people who are in these situations. And it's just, what can we do? What is the power of we, the people, to start building houses? And how do we take for our marginalized societies? Because this is the most important. When I look at the place, I look, how do they treat the LGBTQ? Why? It's not because of my gender, not gender, not even that. Even if I was cisgender person, Orthodox, whatnot, it doesn't matter. Because the way that the LGBTQ is treated and the way that neurodivergent people are treated is going to tell you It's the litmus test for how is society being treated. When society is not being mistreated, then first of all, there's going to be a lot of stability. People are going to, they're not going to have so much a reason to rebel. It's mostly going to be like, okay, they raised the price of this, now we go out to the streets, which is what we should do. And that's pretty much the case. Um, a lot of people who come from, let's say, North Korea and manage to escape and they go into universities and are like, why should I remember the pronoun of every person? It's like, don't they want me to get to know them as a person and not just their pronoun? And this is so difficult and this is so this and this is so that. So, yes, there is something ableistic in assuming that we can remember faces, names, and pronouns. And yes, we do need to tend to that. But also, those people that you think are petty are probably the reason that you can stay here and not go back to the terror that you came from, that was mainly created also by the regime that you came to. When you think about this in a big way, and I had a person asking me about, kind of North Korea as an example of power and so on. It's like, how do they exist? And I'm like, North Korea does not get their power from North Korea. And this is also something that we need to keep in mind. Um, and this is just common sense. Okay, it's not like I have this insider knowledge. I don't have this insider knowledge. It's just like, hey, this is common sense. This is how the international arena works. Okay, the UN itself needs to cooperate with many, many local organizations and global organizations in order to sustain its very existence. And I had an episode that I did about the UN. Um, and so here we are, heading towards an eclipse in my third house of speaking up, and heading towards my solar return that is going to be probably right after the eclipse. So the eclipse is still very much related to my solar return. And so you hear me as one of these voices that reiterate these events from a particular point of view, that's being very accentuated. Saturn in my ninth house, kind of degrees away from the eclipse, although it's separating from the Saturn. I'm with the Pluto in 0 degrees Scorpio, so I'm having the Pluto square. Kind of like, just one of the voices of the generation amongst many voices of the generation. Um, Trying to reflect on the energies. I think it was not for nothing that I was in the airport yesterday and that I did my Spica work. And Spica, the moon was applying to Spica. If you saw my Twitter post, the moon was applying to Spica. Um, it was applying to the ruler to Venus in Gemini. So there was this applying trine. And Venus was sextile in Jupiter. That being said, Venus was applying to square Neptune and Jupiter was applying to square Pluto. So you probably are not going to see a sphere and sundry talismans made with that election. Um, However, if it's between not tending to Spica or not asking for the help of Spica and at all, and having a half-baked talisman with quite harsh aspects to the ruler of the ascendant and basically the ruler of the tropical ruler of Spica with Neptune, then I chose to do something about it, even if it was not the ideal timing. And this is why I say astrology, talismans, their use, even for humanitarian reasons, get to know astrology. Like, this is for practicing astrologers, not necessarily in the sense that you charge money for it, but just that you know what's going on and you can judge yourself if this is good for you or not. Because I'm like, I cannot guarantee, even if I had, you know, decades of experience, I still could not be able to understand how it works with your chart without seeing it, and sometimes with seeing it, because you know yourself more than I ever will. I can know only dogmas and hypotheses and all kinds of things that are really important and can illuminate on you, but there has to be a you there that's going to tell me if that applies. And I know that the you there is self-conceptualizing, inspired or constricted by the context of these paradigms and dogmas, and that's true to all of us. So that's another nature-nurture question that we are facing in this eclipse. So that is just another way to go about it, and that's something we can't really not mention. It's a for the Pluto generation, Pluto Scorpio, the beginning degrees. This, especially the 0 to 3 degrees, 0 to 2 degrees, um, they are going to be the voices of the generation for the upcoming 18 months, because they are just going through this. My natural Pluto is retrograde. Um, we're gonna hear from a lot of Plutos. Maybe because Pluto now is retrograde, my natural Pluto is retrograde. So me speaking up on the Pluto retrogradation period, um, and and that type of people. We also need to kind of hear from the Pluto, and I think the person I met at the airport was the Pluto in the beginning degrees of Libra. Okay, the Pluto Libras that are also from the 0 to 3, because those Plutos are getting the trine relation to this Pluto retrogradation. So they're going through a phase in their life where the transition, the experiences that are being accentuated by Pluto are more easily digestible, and they can see some from a different point of view, part of the conflicts and solutions that we might not be able to see. We also need to tend to the Pluto Sagittarians. Okay, and I was offering Pluto Sagittarians readings that's still on, where the first degrees of Sagittarius is in particular, are now facing their sextile Pluto. And the sextile is another place where they can begin to become more comfortable with the notion of power. So it can be the children who went through the school shootings, perhaps the children who remember the school shootings, and the Pluto Librans as perhaps the people who were at school when that happened. Um, so perhaps those generations will have different point of view about the school shooters, mass shooters in relation to faith and belief. Um, and now with the Pluto Aquarius, there can be mass shooting in relating to social affairs. Okay, so that homeless went and spoke and didn't harm anybody. Another person can say, well, I see what happened to a homeless that speaks. What if if I have access to a gun and I'll just shoot everybody? Anyway, they would cheer up my death if I did otherwise. So I prefer to speak up and say this so that these things won't happen, so that we find solutions that mitigate these issues, that tend to these issues in a good way, so that we won't have these shooting on the news. Okay, I'm not saying that to inspire violence, I'm saying that to predict certain patterns that can be, so that we can tend to them on time and so that there won't be violence. Okay, which is very important disclaimer, because people can misunderstand. There's only so much you can say in 140 characters on Twitter, but this is a bigger scope of knowledge that you can speak, and we have. And I think I'll take a highlight for that. So we basically have these 18 months where we are being shown, especially triggered by eclipses and the Mercury retrograde, we're being shown technology, our society, the nervous system, with the relation of Neptune and Pluto, so also drugs and medications, psychedelics, microdosing, blah blah blah, the pros and cons, the structures for society, and we are shown in various scenarios what do we need to tend to, what do we need to we engineer an algorithm or a product or a society, or build a city or build a country or build a regime state or anarchic state. How do we tend to all these cases, all these ethical problems, societal problems? We have 18 months to tend to that. 18. And this is a particular time that's going to set up the juncture for the next 248 years. That we begin as the cycle of Pluto ingressing into Aquarius for good until the next time Pluto visits 0 degree Aquarius. So, very interesting time to be alive. Very challenging as well because there are a lot of dilemmas and a lot of algorithm pitfalls that we need to tend to, both in our social media, social constructs, social structure, whatnot. Um, and that can apply to you depending on the houses that it triggers, but it kind of triggers a lot. Here we have the eclipses on the Venus Mars, so that would be Scorpio, Aries, Libra, Taurus, that are going to still be with us for the eclipses on the Libra, Aries, because they're ruled by Venus and Mars. So we have 4 signs already triggered, okay, and 2 planets continuing to play. We have Pluto in Aquarius, so wherever is Saturn for you, and for some, wherever is Uranus for you. This is a controversial statement, right? And then, we have where is Saturn, where is Venus? So Venus was in Gemini, Saturn, Mars, sorry, where's Mars, where is Venus? Mars was in Cancer, Mars was previously in Gemini, so Mars in Gemini to Mars in Cancer, Venus in Gemini to Venus in Cancer, so Cancer, and that triggers the Cancer Capricorn. Okay, so we have Aries, Scorpio, Libra, Taurus, Gemini, and that means also Sagittarius, Cancer, Capricorn, and Aquarius, which also triggers Leo. Okay, that happens on a Mercury retrograde, and Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo is in front of Pisces. So the entire chart is lit for entire humanity. Also on a mundane level, we see world events, big world events, transforming the reality in which we live in. And with that particular note, I will tell you bye bye and eat the beautiful lunch cooked by my parent and say thank you very, very much for not having to think about my next meal today. Um, and bless you with easy, easy pivotal times. Bye bye.